Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bruce, and this video or lecture, as you may want to call it, is going to teach you about classical music, about the basic knowledge of music and how to listen to music. Wait a minute, you might ask, why do I need you to teach me about music? I listen to music all the time, and why do I need to waste my time listening to you, Mr. Bruce? Why do I need to know about classical music? Well, you are correct. Absolutely correct. You don't need to listen to me, but let me ask you a question first. What kind of music are you listening to? I reckon it's pop music for most of you, and it's absolutely fine. But are you getting the most out of the music that you are listening? I bet that you're not. How do I know this for sure? Well, let's see if you can answer the following questions. When you are listening to music, what exactly are you listening to? Are you following the text that they are singing? I can say that most of you are following the text that they are singing. But can you follow the bass line? Can you hear any chords there? Do you know what a melody is? What is the mode of this piece? What is the composer trying to do here? If you could answer all these questions without a second doubt, then you know about music very well, and you can close this video. But if you don't even know what I'm talking about in those questions, I suggest that you listen to what I'm saying, because it would be helpful for you to listen to music in an educated way after you finish this lecture. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that you must learn classical music, that pop music is not good. The reason why I am teaching you about classical music here is because it is the most educated way of using music to express the composer's feelings. I am not saying that other genre or form of music is not good, but classical music is the most excellent example for learning music. In this lecture, I'm going to teach you the three main parts of music constructions: rhythm, melody, and harmony. We will also talk about musical notations and forms of music, even introduce operatic arts if we have enough time here. Before we start to talk about music, let's talk about biology for a moment. Where in the brain is music processed primarily? It's the temporal lobe where your hearing goes on. It doesn't matter whether you are hearing language or whether you are hearing music. This sort of processing happens in the primary auditory cortex, both left and right of the temporal lobe. Therefore, the pedagogical techniques that we use on teaching music is virtually identical to those that we use in teaching language. Remember this, the way you are learning music is identical to the way that you use on learning a language. No wonder people say that music is another form of language. Okay, so here are the three main parts of construction of music: rhythm, melody, and harmony. But we will talk a little bit about musical notation before we talk about them, because it is easier for you to understand after you learn musical notation. I hope you have heard about this, or at least seen musical notations. Musical notation is a particularly Western phenomenon. Only the Western people use musical notation principally for their high art music. That's not to say that the Chinese don't have an esoteric form of musical notation, that the Indians do not have an esoteric form of musical notation. They do, but it doesn't intersect quite as intensely as musical notation does in Western cultures. Not saying that all music must use musical notations, but if they do so, it allows the composer to specify rather precisely what he or she wants, to sort of write things out in the form of musical details. It allows us to preserve the work of art. Let's see some examples of musical notation. Of course, you are not going to deal with musical notations like them. They're too difficult for you. You are dealing with the simplest one, the C scale. As you can see in this 5-line graph, which is called ground staff, we have those symbols, which we call them notes, labeled C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C on them. The first C is what we call the middle C on a piano keyboard, which is 261.6 Hz. As we know, sound is produced by vibration, and Hertz is the unit of the frequency of vibration, meaning the object vibrates 1 time per second. in this case 261.6 times per second. As you may have discovered, we note them in an alphabetical order, starts from A up to G, but after G it goes back to A. Why not go down with the alphabet, G, H, I, J, K, and so on? That's because we have the concept of an octave replication, where the C you see on the graph at the end sounds identical to the C at the beginning, but only higher. That's because the higher C vibrates at a frequency of 523.2 Hz, which is double the lower C, 261.6 Hz. So here we have an octave, and there are 12 pitches within an octave. These pitches are in different ratios, or irrational numbers, which I am not going to specifically explain here because it's too difficult. The distance between C and D is a whole step, and D to E, but not E to F. Why? Because that is how they divided this scale. At the first, there was no black notes between the white notes. But then people back in 11th century found there are gaps between C and D, and D and E, where you could put another note there. Those black notes, we named them as C sharp or E flat, and C sharp is equal with D flat because it is the same note there. Depends on whether you name it C sharp or D flat. So from C to C sharp is a half step, C sharp to D is a half step, D to D sharp is a half step, D sharp to E is a half step, but E to F, there's no black notes here, because E to F is already the closest distance. It is already a half step, and so is B to C. So that's how the scale is divided within an octave. But before that, musical notations are not as a straightly labeled graph as they appear now. It looks like this. Pretty weird, isn't it? So, after talking about pitches, let's talk about durations. I know this is a long day. Just hang on with me a little while longer. The durations of notes also belong to the concept of musical notation. The notes we saw before are called quarter notes that carry the beat, which we usually use them as the unit note, unless the meter is using an eighth note or half note as unit. You can see in this graph, a whole note is 4 beats long, equals to 2 half notes, which is 2 beats long each. A half note equals to 2 quarter notes, a quarter note equals to 2 eighth notes, an eighth note equals to 2 16th notes, and so on. You can see it's mathematics. And how do we write a note that lasts for 3 beats? It's very easy. We simply just add a dot here, right next to the half note, so that it now lasts for 3 beats. What happens if we add a dot after a quarter note? It lasts for 1.5 beats because the dot always carries half of the duration of the note comes before it. So when it comes after a whole note, the dot carries a half of the duration of the whole note, which is 2 beats. And of course, we have these notes represent the duration of sound. We also have symbols that represent the absence of sound, rest. And we can see that it works just the same as notes durations, the rest durations. So now, when you find the notes of a violin sonata, you can see that musical notation is really just graphs. We consider music with 2 axes. The pitch is the vertical axis, which shows high or low the note is. We say how high or how low the pitch is. And the rhythm is the horizontal axis, which is simply just repetitions and combinations of durations, which is all mathematics. Pretty easy what rhythm is, right? As long as you know durations, rhythms are just repetition and combination of durations. So that's it for our first lecture about musical notations and rhythm. The next lecture will be working on melodies. if you decide to continue learning this course. That's it for me, and if you have any questions or suggestions, please email me. I will leave my email account at the end, and please help me finish the questionnaire attached so that I could make improvement. I will see you when we talk about melodies. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.